For the folks at home,
Yeah, but it's okay now. We're gonna make it.
We're gonna make it after all.
We're gonna make it.
So nothing much is going on with you, right? You did not just 1 hour ago fly in from Holland, where you were performing with
this groovy trumpet player named Alistair Payne. He's from Scotland. Kind of contacted me out of the blue, or really this cat named Ambrose, another trumpet player from Oakland. He posted a picture on Instagram holding my book. And so, you know, Alistair and his partner, you know, being the killers that pay attention to killers, you know, was like, oh, what's he reading? And so they picked up the book and we're like, oh, we have to work with this cat. So
I was very fortunate I got to talk with you in Amsterdam.
Live from Amsterdam.
That was awesome.
Where I was having neck problems.
Did anything work out?
Man, they did. Thank you for
glad.
all of that info. You know, it's hard to keep up with jazz musicians when they really start swinging. You'll put your throat in all kind of strange shapes to keep up.
Well, I went to CalArts, and they're big on like all the vocal training, all the musculature training and exercising to keep the vessel intact.
I'm on it, man.
Yeah.
I need to be more intentional.
Oh my gosh! Well,
can't be a natural forever. You know what I mean?
Well, you're having a good run. Poet laureate of San Francisco. That's no mean shakes. That's
something to write home about.
I mean, you're almost as like San Francisco is almost as great as, you know, Los Angeles.
Or better.
Really? Because I heard that it was almost as great, except you've got the one thing on your side, the movie Vertigo. It's like
we have Vertigo.
That's it. That's
it.
Yeah.
Well, we also Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Okay.
San Francisco is the capital of the universe in the future. We have
if you
that
ascribe
as well.
to that mythology. But today, after our interview, we're going straight to Small World Books to duke it out. San Francisco, L.A. Who's better on this day? So I'm just saying, you know.
And I'm sorry.
Throwing it down right now.
I'm sorry I'm going to have what's about to happen to
oh, dear.
To you.
Okay. Well, all right, bring it.
I'm always up for a fight.
Okay, all right. So I love your poetry, and I'm so thrilled to ask you if you could possibly tell me this poem of yours that took years to make. I think the real title of it is I Do Not Know the Spelling of Money, but we lay people know it as I go to the train tracks and follow them to the station of my enemies. So will you say it to me, just for me?
I got you.
All right.
I go to the railroad tracks and follow them to the station of my enemies. A cobalt-toothed man pitches pennies at my mugshot negative. All over the United States, there are toddlers in the rock. I see why everyone out here got in the big cosmic basket, and why blood agreements mean a lot, and why I get shot back at. I understand the psycho-spiritual refusal to write white history or take the glass freeway. White skin tattooed on my right forearm. Ricochet sewage near where I collapsed into a rat-infested manhood. My new existence as living graffiti. In the kitchen with a lot of gun cylinders to hack up. House of God in part, no cops in part. My body brings down the Christmas. The new bullets pray over blankets made from the old bullets. Pray over the 28th hour's next beauty mark. Extrajudicial Confederate statue restoration. The waistband before the next protest poster. But by the way, time is not an illusion, Your Honor. I will save your deaths for last. You're witty, Your Honor. You're moving money again, Your Honor. It is only raining one thing. Non-white cops and prison guard shadows reminded me of spoiled milk floating on an oil spill. A neighborhood making a lot of fuss over its demise, a new lake for a Black Panther party. Malcolm X's ballroom jacket slung over my son's shoulder, the figment of village, a new noose to a new white preacher, all in an abstract painting of a president. Bought slavery some time, didn't it? The tension screeches of military boats and election Tuesday cars, a cold-blooded study in leg irons, proof that some white people have actually fondled nooses. Their sundown couples made their vows of love over opaque peach plastic and boat action audiences. The Medgar every second is definitely my favorite law of science. Fondle news clippings and primitive Methodists, my arm changes imperialisms. Simple policing versus structural frenzies. Elementary school script versus even wider white spectrums, artists bleeding in the challenge of watching civilians think, man. Terrible rituals they have around the corner. They let their elders beg for public mercy. I'm gonna go ahead and sharpen these kids' heads in the air myself and see how much gravy spills out of family crest. Modern fans are well with that. T-shirt poems and T-shirt guilt and me having on the cheapest pair of shoes on the bus. I have no choice but to read the city walls for signs of my life.
That's just gorgeous.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about why you wrote that?
I am a dialectical materialist, and so I'm always kind of artistically preoccupied with showing sides of contradiction, with highlighting conflict as generator of reality. And so that poem just is kind of is just making a point that ultimately it's a monopoly of violence that makes this society go round. And it's just a kind of a survey of images and associations with that kind of the nature of principal contradiction between oppressor and oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In all the lines, I keep coming back to, you have the least expensive shoes on the bus. I don't know why. Talked about materialism. What is that's the Kant philosophy, right? Dialectical materialism, right? Is that?
Well,
educate me.
What now this is
filtered through San Francisco. I know.
This is the San Francisco knockoff version. As I understand it, it basically was an invention of Hegel.
Oh, it's Hegel. Right.
And Hegel comes in. He's really the tail end of that, really of like white enlightenment. And I think what he brought to the table singularly in relationship to all who came before him was this preoccupation with ideas and how they evolve. Though they had freed themselves from the kind of divine prerogative, still ideas were very static and unchanging and invincible and magical to a certain extent. And so he comes along and he says, no, ideas evolve. Mm-hmm. And they evolve through dialectical relationships, which is really just through negation. Like you have an idea, a counter comes along, and in that struggle, a new idea is made.
Beautiful.
Now, then along comes Marx, let's not be afraid of Marx. It's okay, a little Marx won't hurt. Marx comes along and he takes it out of the realm of ideas and puts the dialectic completely in people, right? And so instead of just this kind of like, just theory versus theory, it's now groups of people versus groups of people who exist in a contradiction And that contradiction, instead of coughing up new ideas, although it does cough up new ideas, it also coughs up the material of society. So in essence, like struggles for power is what spits up everything you sit in, everything you see, everything that sees you.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if that's where that poem is coming from, then, I mean, you're right on. One of my favorite moments in the poem is the I think it's white milk on top of like
oil spill.
of the oil spill.
Yeah,
gorgeous, so gorgeous.
Thank you.
And you can get that like on vinyl, right? You can hear
it
fully performed.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear a poem?
Yes.
You do?
I would love to hear Desert Girl.
How come?
Because it is. If I had known it was going to be a pop quiz to go along with it. Now,
How much you pay me for it?
It's because you have this
Yes.
this very kind of like very thoughtful, kind of elegant style juxtaposed by, just almost like horrific.
I was gonna say horror.
You know what I mean? Which just kind of just makes for just makes for music on.
When I was growing up and they would find my poetry, they meaning, my grandmother, my mother, they'd be like, you can't continue on this path, writing this horrible stuff. No one wants to hear about this horrible stuff. And yet, thank you, Tongo. No one ever asks me about this poem, but I mean, it hasn't come out yet. But nobody ever talks about it. Like none of my editors, nobody ever showed it to. Only Tongo.
Honored.
Yeah, so it's going to come out in this book in November 2022.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. I called this book Rock Waves, Slow Drags for years, like 3 years. But we changed it to Cantadora, Letters from California. And so this is my proof with a bunch of mistakes in it. So this is the only one that'll ever have like the soul title that was that it had dragging behind it. But I'm so glad to read it to you.
I've been there.
Have you? They changed. The man tried to change you.
Like really was like, are you sure?
Okay, so this poem is called Desert Girl Arms Hanging Alive. When I was a child and the Herald Examiner legged open on kitchen beams between lamps and books and cream of wheat and glass brown beer bottles and the smudged elbows of flea market men in faint smells of Listerine, Doan's pills with rice pudding cooling on the counter of vanilla lemon 1970s Los Angeles. My grandmother read aloud the story of the desert girl, arms chopped and smeared with sand, walking out of the desert. Her blood drowned the tarmac as she fled the scene of the crime, rolled from the culvert and clung to the side of the earth on the highway. Alive like those gold sleepers from the Twilight Zone, out somewhere past San Bernardino, past civilization, back to railroads and stagecoaches and people come from the east. Our progenitors, some of those faces from the photo album, strange etched names on the silver service, Willis, McGee, portraits made in St. Joseph, Missouri on their way west. What could be worth so much to sleep for 1,000 years? The hub-hooped black 1957 tub covered in a canvas tarp, the glass cage chambers slumbering through centuries, the skull and bone leavings of an all-too-early crack, this desert, this hope and oblivion eternally in one landscape. Did Desert Girl wake in blue numbness, or did she never sleep, consciousness beside her like faith or stars, going by gas caps and jackrabbits along the scrub and stem of the horizon? The first car she saw was filled with girls and boys, farther and then beside her, horrified, her river of blood and sanguine dress and remnants of arms above her. See me, call on me, Mother. Later, she said she held her arms high to keep her muscles from slipping out. But the boys and girls were too scared to stop, so Desert Girl walked for hours till an old couple stopped and wrapped her in beach towels and took her to the hospital, where they dug the grotto of her thighs, harvesting sinew to bring her arms half home and bring her all the way out of the desert. And she lived. And my grandmother folded the paper and turned grandfather's morning sausage and plated last night's T-bone in her lemon true kitchen. The bone, she said, is the best part. Saved it just for you. And I sat with my grandparents and I cried for unknown girls under the 7 o'clock bells of the church in Los Feliz.
Man, that's heavy, man. That's one hell of a poem. It reminds me of this. I read this book called Zen Mind, Beginner Mind, and it's it's just kind of a Buddhist book, right? And one of the assertions is that you in moving intentionally through all your activities, every activity really is just one activity. It's just the activity of a calm mind in motion, right? Or a calm mind, calm minding. So
Blue being blue.
And I think that's what the kind of like potential of poetry is, just kind of like it's the same almost a calm eye, a loving eye, like a almost an invincible, but like a laid back but invincible gaze, right? That can run through all of the, all of the ups and downs of this human thing, you know what I mean? And come out, almost come out unscathed, because it's ultimately just kind of like, it's just one activity. It's just this kind of like, this groovy blue perspective. You know what I mean?
Well, that's kind of the artist's, I don't know, maybe like a hook for me. I almost hate to admit this, but as a witness, you're safe, right? You can come out unscathed, right? All those horrible things that didn't happen to you. You got to live to write about it or something.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cowardly in some ways. Sometimes I feel like I'm stealing people's stories. I was listening to Rocio Carlos the other day telling poems by the river, and she said something about, how do I tell the story that doesn't necessarily belong to me? And I thought hard about that. For days now I've been thinking about, being a person of mixed heritage myself. Sometimes I feel like, am I dancer or am I just witness? Am I, are these really the ancient voices calling me, in my blood and bones, and the people of the land, generations of these people whose stories they're constantly hitting me and, compelling me to write. Sometimes I think, well, maybe it's just the nosy white lady in my blood rather than, all these other people.
The minute anybody decides to approach a piece of reality, there's included as a poet, there is a change, and that who can be kind of like, not necessarily, almost tragically heroicized, are those who never leave that event.
Yeah.
psyches
Sure,
don't
the
leave
trauma.
that event, right? And so, but there actually is a universal invitation to leave any event.
Mm-hmm.
And though some of us, are kind of more socially padded or, might have been through less or whatever, it's still the same. There's still the same potential, and I mean, there are people who walked out of, unimaginable misadventure and come to reproduce themselves in a completely different way, and I think those people would forgive you would not feel like, oh, what is she talking about, or why is she talking? I wouldn't worry about it.
That's interesting, yeah.
I
In a
worry
way,
about
I
it.
mean, I guess every day I'm asking for some kind of forgiveness, but somehow not when I'm writing. I don't have like a magpie syndrome that makes me feel some kind of strange guilt because, like with this poem, Desert Girl, Arms Hanging Alive, like I was, a little baby when they told me this story, and it made me think about, being a girl, being a woman, being, preyed upon. Is this desert mine? Or if I go out there, maybe I'll never come back, and not because of, a wolf or, a lightning bolt, but maybe because of, my brother,
Yeah.
So in that sense, whatever I'm dancing to or witnessing always seems to be coming from a real place inside me that resonates.
And also, if you look at kind of poetry as almost like offering a mode of intelligence for people to emulate, there's like the just to kind of just to throw your mind at a page without the kind of outside of social convention, almost inherently in trying to break conventions of language, or other contracts get shattered along the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in throwing, and just kind of throwing your consciousness at the page, there's all these kind of like potentials of giving people a new perspective. And like I've talked to more than a few like old school revolutionaries, and I asked like, well, what put you on the path, or what started you in this praxis? And a few times they said, I heard a poem, or even changed the course of their praxis, where they thought they had it, and they heard a poem, and it gave the struggle a whole new dimension for them. And I think in this way, like, Audre Lorde is a great guide for our spirit, because she's, like how fearless she is, like moving on the page is really like a permission, and actually is in some ways the horror then is the least you can do, is the anti, because the whole hype is people don't want to come to terms with what kind of world we actually living in, right? Like millions of indigenous people died, and we sitting here having this you know what I mean? Not to take anything away from the conversation, but this whole room, and we won't break the fourth wall, you know what I mean? But this whole room.
We might.
Everybody in it, all the materials in it. Like, man, this is a blood-soaked room. This is a blood-soaked city. This is a blood-soaked land. And on the flip side, actually, back to Audre Lorde, I was recently reading Sister Outsider, a book of kind of like essays and speeches. And on the constructive side, growing new ideas, liberatory ideas. She makes the point that, the poet creates the first layer, or that foundation that your mind can wrap itself around, a freedom that you can't imagine. Like if I'm like, okay, be free as the proverbial bird, right? Well, where do I begin? How do I start? Like, there's so much of our life that will have to be reorganized, But now through this poem, here's just a little, a location, for you to start to build this idea off of, or build a praxis out of, and just find more and more kind of like width and nuance and on and on and on.
Yeah. The poem is the location.
Right. Is the sanity.
So the location.
Which is ironic, or which is strange to think, because at a glance, like a poem, it just seems out there. Like a crazy person thinks like this. Only a crazy person would think this makes sense. But as it actually functions, it's actually this sanity.
Maybe that's true for
analysis.
all, hopefully, sacred acts, right? That they are the locations for those healings.
Right.
Well, I could talk with you forever, but, we have to change locations and get up to Small World Books because we gotta battle.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
All right.
I want to apologize to Los Angeles in
advance. Oh, really? In advance?
For
I got Lynn Thompson with me today.
You can line them all. You can bring
oh, really?
Line them all up.
Okay, all right.
We do this one at a time, all at once.
Well, let this be the first of many meetings, my good friend.
For sure.
Welcome back home.
For sure.
The Flying Dutchman returns.
I like that nickname.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's yours forever.
Right on.